My daughter got married. My son-in-law was a wealthy, successful man, yet they wanted to live in my house. I understood the reason later. My name is Doris. I'm 67 years old. I raised my daughter, Grace, on my own. I worked in a factory for 28 years, breathed in its dust, went half-deaf from its noise. When I retired, I had two things: a small apartment and a hard character no one could take from me. Life taught me many things, but the most important was this: never be fooled by what people say. When Grace introduced me to Jason, the first thing she said was, "Mom, he's a very successful man." I smiled. That's what mothers do. But something small and quiet inside me said, "Is he?" Jason was handsome, that's true. He knew how to speak, that's true. When he sat at the table, he placed his napkin on his lap, like someone used to dining in certain places. He brought flowers for Grace, and sometimes a small box of chocolates for me. Always an expensive brand, always in brand new packaging. I never ate those chocolates, I kept them. I didn't fully know why at the time. Now I do. The wedding was grand. Jason's side was crowded, well-dressed, polite in their speech. But as I sat at that table, I slowly realized something. No one really seemed to know each other. People introduced as relatives felt distant. Those brought in as old friends didn't have that warmth in their eyes when they looked at Jason. You know, that thing you see in the eyes of people who truly care. That's not how people look at someone they genuinely love. We'll take a very short break. If you don't want to miss new stories, please subscribe to the channel. And one more thing. Throughout the entire wedding, Jason's mother didn't say a single word. She just sat, ate, and left. I told her, I wish them a long and happy marriage. She turned to me, her lips moved, but no sound came out. I still remember that look. She seemed sad, as if she knew something. One day, Grace called. Her voice wasn't strange, on the contrary, it was perfectly normal. Sometimes the worst news comes in the calmest voice. "Mom, there's a major renovation at Jason's place. It'll take 3 months. Can we stay with you?" I stayed silent. "Mom, how many months did you say?" 3, at most 3. 3 months. I renovated my bathroom in 2 weeks, but I stayed quiet because there was something in Grace's voice, like a thin wire about to snap. "All right," I said. "I'll be waiting." After I hung up, I went to the kitchen, poured myself some tea. I looked out the window. My neighbor Betty was in her garden, tending to her flowers. It was a normal afternoon, but this is what I was thinking. Grace had been married to Jason for 6 months. In those 6 months, I had never seen their home. Not once had she said, "Mom, come see our place." And I hadn't asked. Because people hide the things they don't want to show. You don't need to ask. And now that house was under renovation. 3 months. But Grace had never talked about it. Not happily, not tiredly, never at all. As if that house didn't exist. As if it never had. My tea went cold. I didn't drink it. That night before bed, I thought about something. Where does a successful man stay temporarily? A hotel, a friend's place, his mother's house, not his mother-in-law's, if he has any other option. So Jason had no other option. Why? They moved in on a Saturday. 2 suitcases, 1 large bag, and Jason's temporary laptop case, which didn't look temporary at all. I stood at the door, smiled, said, "Welcome." Jason shook my hand, firm, confident. Grace hugged me tightly. I know my daughter's hugs. There's always a message in them. "Everything is okay, Mom." That morning, that message wasn't there. The first week was fine. or it seemed that way. Jason woke up early, said, "I'm going to work," and came back late at night. Grace worked from home, sat at her computer, cooked in the evenings. I stayed in my corner, tried not to be too visible. Even if he was a guest, a man should feel comfortable in a house. I know that. But in the second week, small things started. Small, easy-to-miss things. But I've been in this world for 67 years. I notice the small things before the big ones. For example, one evening, Jason was on the phone. He lowered his voice, but the walls were thin. "I told you, I'm handling it," he said. That was it. Silence. Then again, I said I'm handling it. Twice. Same sentence. People who repeat themselves like that are either lying or trying to convince themselves. For example, one day, Grace said, "One of Jason's project payments got delayed." Not to me, more like to herself, while doing the dishes. I pretended not to hear, but I did. For example, Jason's car. When they first arrived, there was a BMW. By the third week, there was a different car in the parking spot, older, faded. I asked Grace, she said. He left it for repairs. I looked into her eyes. They shifted away. I was collecting these things, quietly, without showing anything. And then Betty came. Betty was my neighbor for 10 years. A good woman. She doesn't gossip, but she doesn't hesitate to tell what she sees. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Jason was at work. Grace had gone upstairs to visit a friend. I was alone, drinking tea. The doorbell rang. Betty stood there with a small plate of cake. I was glad to see her. We went inside together. We sat. I poured tea. After a moment of silence, Betty said, "Doris, I want to ask you something, but I don't know how." I set my cup down. Sentences that start like that never end well. "Ask," I said. "Is your son-in-law's name Jason Miller?" "Yes." Betty placed a photo on the table, old, slightly wrinkled, but clear. A man, a woman, a small child. It looked like a picnic, sunny day, all smiling. "Is this your son-in-law?" she asked. I looked at the man. It was Jason, younger, but I recognized his eyes, his jaw. "Where did you get this?" I asked. Betty took a deep breath. "My sister lives in New York. She called me last week. She saw something on social media. A woman posted this photo. She's looking for this man." I said nothing. "Doris," Betty said slowly, "that woman says she's his wife." Nothing in the room moved. Sunlight came through the window. Steam rose from my cup. Everything was normal, but I was frozen. "The child," I finally asked. 4 years old. A 4-year-old child. And Jason had married Grace 8 months ago. Betty left the photo on the table and stood up. "I had to tell you," she said at the door. "What you do next is up to you." The door closed. I sat there, staring at the photo. Jason was smiling in it, the same smile. He smiled at Grace like that, sometimes at me too. Now I understood what was behind that smile. When Grace came home that night, I was in bed. Or I looked like I was. The bedroom door was closed, but my eyes were open. I could hear voices from their room. Jason's voice low, calm, Grace responding, like a normal conversation. My daughter knew nothing. And that night, I thought this. When would I tell her? How would I tell her? But more importantly, what did I need to learn first? Because I had a photo. But a photo wasn't enough. Jason was a smart man. He would deny everything. He might even convince Grace. She loved him, and people in love sometimes refuse to see what they don't want to see. No, I wouldn't go with just a photo. I was going to find more. The next morning, everything was normal. I prepared breakfast. Jason said, "Good morning, Doris," sat down, ate, and left. Grace warmed her hands around her cup, looked at me and said, "Are you okay, Mom?" "I'm fine," I said. I even smiled. That's what mothers do. But inside me, a machine had started working. Silent, cold, methodical. That day, I called Betty. "Can you find out that woman's name?" I said. "Ask your sister." "Doris, are you sure? These things. Please, just find her name." 2 hours later, a message came. Patricia Smith, New York, and a profile link. I took my phone, sat down, and opened it. Patricia Smith was a woman in her 30s, dark hair, tired eyes, but in her photos she was always smiling, the kind of forced smile that comes from life itself. There wasn't much on her profile. Her privacy settings were high. But there was one thing, the post she had shared a few weeks ago. It was still there. The photo, the same photo Betty had brought. Under it, she had written, "Does anyone know this man? His name is Jason Miller. Please contact me." There were comments below, mostly things like, "Sorry to hear that. Hope you find him. Men are always like this." But one comment caught my attention, from another woman. "The same thing happened to me. I sent you a message." I paused. I wrote to Patricia, short, direct. "My name is Doris. Jason Miller is my son-in-law. We need to talk." Then I put the phone down, went to the kitchen, and washed the dishes. My hands were shaking, but the water was hot. It helped a little. There was no reply until evening. I cooked, set the table. The three of us sat down. That night, Jason was very cheerful. He talked about a business meeting, said things were going really well. Grace smiled. I smiled too. I held my fork and knife properly, ate slowly, gave nothing away. At midnight, my phone vibrated. Patricia had written, "I'd like to call you. Are you available?" "I am," I replied. The phone rang. Her voice was trembling, but steady. "Is Jason really your son-in-law?" "Yes. He married my daughter 8 months ago." Silence. A long silence, a subcont. Then, 8 months ago. "Yes. We never got divorced," Patricia said. "Legally, we are still married." I sat on my bed. The night was dark. I hadn't turned on the lamp. I just sat and listened. Patricia told me everything. A 4-year marriage, a small child. One day, Jason said he was going on a business trip. When he came back, he was distant. Then he came back less often. Then he stopped coming back at all. But he never filed for divorce. Patricia had wanted to, but Jason said, "Let's handle it without lawyers," and kept delaying it. Months passed, and then Patricia saw something online. A wedding photo of Jason and Grace. Someone she knew had shared it. "I didn't know about your wedding," she said, "but since we're not divorced, that marriage is already invalid." Invalid. Grace's marriage was legally invalid. Jason had married my daughter while he was still another woman's husband, the father of another woman's child, and now he was sleeping in my house. "Patricia," I said. My voice was very calm. I surprised myself. "I need to ask you something. Did Jason have debts, financial problems?" Silence. "Why do you ask?" Because a successful man doesn't stay at his mother-in-law's house temporarily. Patricia spoke slowly. Jason had a company 2 years ago. It went bankrupt. One of his partners filed a lawsuit. I only found out about it much later after he left. And there's something else. She paused. A letter came from the bank once in my name. Part of the debt from our joint account is still listed under me. I hung up the phone and sat in the dark for a long time. Now I had this, a legally invalid marriage, a woman and child abandoned in another city, a bankrupt company, a lawsuit, and most likely debts, and the real reason Jason had moved into my house. Under the excuse of renovations, he was running, but I didn't yet know exactly what he was running from, or where he was running to. I didn't sleep that night, but I made a decision. I wouldn't tell Grace yet, because if I told Grace, she would tell Jason. If she told Jason, he would disappear, and before disappearing, I didn't know how much damage he could do. First, I would learn everything, then I would speak. When people are hiding something, they work hard. But as what they're hiding grows, they get tired, and tired people make mistakes. Jason had started making mistakes. The first one was small. One Tuesday morning, I woke up early and went to the kitchen. Jason was sitting there, looking at his phone. He hadn't heard me. I glanced at the screen, just for a second, enough to see. It was a banking app. I saw a number clearly. It had a minus sign. When he noticed me, he turned the phone. "You're up early," he said, smiling. "Couldn't sleep," I said. "Old age." He laughed. He was relieved. The second mistake was bigger. That week, Grace said to me, "Mom, Jason has a business opportunity. It needs a small investment, temporary. It'll come back within a month." I looked at her face. Her eyes avoided mine. These weren't Grace's words. They sounded memorized, like she was repeating something. "How much?" I asked. $15,000. I stayed silent. "Mom, I know it's a lot, but where are you going to find $15,000? Grace took a deep breath. "We were going to ask you." Something broke inside me, quietly, without even a sound. Jason was living in my house, eating at my table, drinking my tea, and now he wanted my money. Grace left. I sat there. $15,000. Money I had saved from my retirement. Money I had set aside for the future of the daughter I raised on my own. Jason knew about it. Grace must have told him. Mothers tell their daughters. Daughters tell their husbands. That evening, I called Patricia again. "Did Jason ask you for money too?" I said. A long silence. "In our second year of marriage," Patricia said, "he asked for my mother's inheritance for an investment. $40,000. He never paid it back." I ended the call. Then I called Daniel Whitaker. He was an old neighbor, had moved away 10 years ago, but he was a lawyer, a good man. I told him everything. Patricia, the marriage, the company, the lawsuit, the $15,000. Daniel listened quietly. Then he said, "Doris, this man is dangerous. Be careful. But know this, you have a lot in your hands. Legally, the marriage is already invalid. That's important to leverage. But before you tell Grace, you need to document everything. Because when you tell her, Jason will deny it, and Grace won't know who to believe." "How do I document it?" "Patricia can give an official statement. The company bankruptcy is in public records. Bank statements, court filings, they're all accessible. Give me a few days." How many days? 5? Maybe 7. I hung up and looked at the calendar. 7 days. For 7 days, I would look Jason in the face, say, "Good morning," serve him food. For 7 days, I would look into Grace's eyes and stay silent. I could do it because there was no other choice. And during those 7 days, something else happened. 4 days soon had passed. It was Friday afternoon. Jason was home. Grace had gone shopping. I was in my room, the door slightly open. Jason was on the phone. His voice was louder than usual, angry. "I told you, I'm fixing it from here. Yes, I know. No, not yet. I promise you, within this month." Then his voice dropped, almost to a whisper, but I heard it. "Doris, the old woman won't understand anything. I'll handle it." I sat in my room, hands on my knees. Outside, I could hear children playing. The sun was out. It was a normal Friday afternoon. The old woman won't understand anything. Inside me, that machine, that silent, cold machine, sped up a little more. Daniel came back in 5 days, just as he promised. He didn't call. He came to my door. He had a thin folder in his hand. He sat down, opened it, placed it in front of me. Company bankruptcy, on record, $42,000 owed to 2 partners. The lawsuit was still ongoing. A notarized statement from Patricia Smith, confirming that her legal marriage to Jason Miller was still active, that the divorce process had been deliberately delayed, that $40,000 had not been repaid. And one more thing. Something Daniel found that I didn't know. Another address registered under Jason's name. In California, a small apartment. Rent was still being paid monthly. "What is the California apartment?" I asked. Daniel adjusted his glasses. "I don't know, but the rent is being paid, so it's not empty." Another woman, another story. I didn't know, but I knew this. It was wrong to say Jason had no home. He did, which meant he had another reason for moving into mine. He was running from New York, from Patricia, from the lawsuit, from the debts. And my house wasn't just a temporary shelter. Grace was the shelter. Grace's name, Grace's trust, and most importantly, Grace's mother's savings. I closed the folder. "Daniel," I said, "there's one more thing I need to do before I tell Grace." "What?" "I'm waiting for Jason to ask me for money." Daniel looked at me. "Doris, when he asks, everything will be ready, and in that moment, I'll decide." Daniel said nothing. He left the folder with me and walked out. I took the folder, sat down, and turned the pages one by one. Patricia's signature, official seals, company records, case numbers. These weren't just documents anymore. They were a man's true face, written on paper, cold and clear. Grace came home late that night. She was tired, went straight to her room. I was sitting in the kitchen, the light still on. Jason walked in, paused as he passed. "Mrs. Doris, you're still awake?" "Sometimes I can't sleep," I said. "Old age." He smiled. "Sorry to hear that," he said, and walked away. I watched him. In a few days, he would come with the money issue. I knew it. A man who had taken $40,000 from Patricia wouldn't stop at 15. First, he would try small. I would say, "I'll think about it." He would wait. Then he would come back with something bigger. And when he did, I would be ready. The money issue came up on the 10th day. A little earlier than I expected, but I wasn't surprised. Impatient people make plans, but they can't stick to them. And people under pressure become even more impatient. It was a Sunday afternoon. Grace was in the kitchen. Jason came into the living room and sat down across from me. I took a sip of my tea and waited. "Mrs. Doris," he said, his voice warm, that familiar warmth. "May I speak with you for a moment?" "Go ahead," I said. He began. "A business opportunity, a safe investment, short-term, guaranteed return." He had a partner, reliable, he said. He said, but time was running out. A decision had to be made this week. $15,000, just 6 weeks. Then it would be returned, with a profit on top. I listened, without interrupting, without frowning. I just listened. When he finished, I stayed silent for a moment. I looked out the window, then I turned back to him. "Jason," I said, "I've never really understood you." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "What do you mean? You're a successful man. That's what Grace says. That's what you say. But a successful man doesn't temporarily stay at his mother-in-law's house, and he doesn't ask the owner of that house for money." His face didn't change immediately. He was a good actor, but something moved in his eyes, small and quick, a flicker of concern. "Mrs. Doris, this is just temporary. The business. Jason," my voice was very calm. "Do you know Patricia Smith?" He froze, just for a second, maybe less, but he froze, and that second was enough. Then he smiled, an easy smile, practiced. "Who is that?" "She lives in New York. She has a child, 4 years old." The smile faded. "Who told you? And you are still legally married." I took another sip of tea. "Which means your marriage to Grace is invalid." He stood up suddenly, the chair scraping back. "This is ridiculous. Who told you this? Sit down, Jason." My voice was so sharp that even I was surprised. He was too. He sat. "I know about the company bankruptcy. I know about the $42,000 in debt. I know about the lawsuit. I know about the $40,000 from Patricia. I know about the apartment in California." After each sentence, I left a pause, so it would settle in. Jason's face was no longer an actor's face. It was his real face now, cornered, calculating, looking for an escape. "Are you going to tell Grace?" he said finally, his voice lower. "I don't know yet." "What do you want?" I looked at him for a long moment. "I don't want anything, just know this. You're going to leave this house. When you leave is up to you. But you will leave, and before you go, you will tell Grace everything, not me, you." "If I tell her, if you don't, I will, but if I do, I'll have documents with me. Do you know Daniel Whitaker, a lawyer, the one who prepared Patricia's statement? He works very thoroughly. Everything is on record." Jason had gone pale. "Mrs. Doris, listen. We can resolve this, quietly, without hurting Grace. Grace is my daughter." I set my cup down, not hard, but clearly. "And you've already hurt her. You won't hurt her anymore." I stood up, left the living room, went into the kitchen. Grace was still there, stirring something, her back to me. She turned, smiled. "Mom, what did you talk about?" "Jason is going to tell you something," I said. "Tonight." Her face changed. "What?" "He'll tell you." I took her hand, squeezed it. "But I'm here, always." Her eyes filled with tears, without knowing why. Mothers see this sometimes, the moment before the storm, before the child sees it. That evening, we had dinner, the 3 of us. Jason barely spoke. Grace noticed, looked at me. I smiled. After dinner, I went to my room. I closed the door, but left it slightly open. I sat and waited. Half an hour later, the voices started. At first low, then Grace's voice rose. Something broke. I don't know if it was a glass or a plate. Then crying. I know Grace is crying. I've known it since she was little. The kind when she scraped her knee, the kind when she fell. This was the second. She had fallen. I stood up, went to the door, stopped. Grace's door opened. Jason came out. He saw me, stopped. Our eyes met. "Is it over?" I asked. He didn't answer. He went into his room. I walked to Grace's door and knocked softly. "Grace." No answer. I knocked again. "Your mother is here." The door opened. Grace's eyes were swollen, her face red, her hair disheveled. She looked at me. "You knew," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "For how long?" "A few weeks." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because if I came to you with just a photo, you wouldn't have believed me. I wanted to give you everything, complete and clear, and I did." Grace took a step, then stopped, then ran to me like a little child, like she had fallen. She wrapped her arms around my neck and cried. I held her tightly, with these hands hardened by years in that factory. While crying, she whispered, "What do I do now?" "You send him away," I said. "I'll handle the rest." Jason stayed in the house for 2 more days. 2 days. 2 days too many for me, but Grace wanted it. "Let him pack his things," she said. I didn't interfere. Because this decision had to be hers. Motherhood is sometimes stepping back, letting go, watching. During those 2 days, Jason never met my eyes. He left early in the mornings, came back late. He didn't sit at the table for meals. It was as if he had already left, but his body was still there. As for me, every morning I had my breakfast, drank my tea, read my newspaper. Normal. On the evening of the second day, he packed his suitcases. Grace was in her room, door closed. I was sitting in the living room holding a book, but not reading it. Jason paused as he was leaving. His suitcases were by the door, laptop bag on his shoulder. He turned to me. I expected something, an apology, a threat, one last move. When people are cornered, they do one or the other. Jason did neither. He just looked at me for a long time. Then he turned, opened the door, and left. The door closed. Silence filled the house. But this time, it was different. Not heavy, light, clean, like air that hadn't been there in a long time. I stood up, went to Grace's door, knocked. "He's gone," I said. No answer. Then, "I know. Should I make tea?" A short pause. "Yes." I went to the kitchen, put the water on, took out the cups. Grace came in a few minutes later. Her eyes were still swollen, but she was standing. She sat. I poured her tea, sat across from her. We stayed silent. Our tea steamed. Streetlights were visible through the window. "How did you figure it out?" Grace asked finally. "Betty brought the photo." "Betty?" She was surprised. "Neighbor Betty?" "Her sister lives in New York." Grace laughed, but it was a tearful laugh. "The neighbor woman." "The neighbor woman," I said. We were silent again. Grace held her cup with both hands, warming herself a little. "Mom," she said, "what about me? How did I not see it?" I looked at her, my daughter, the one I raised on my own. "Because you loved him," I said, "and people in love sometimes don't see what they don't want to see. This isn't your fault." "But, Grace," I took her hand, "when you saw it, what did you do?" You questioned it. You tried to understand. And in the end, you accepted the truth. That's not easy. Strong people do that. Her eyes filled. I don't feel strong right now. I know, and you don't have to be right now. I'm here, she cried. I held her hand. I didn't let go. We sat together until late that night. Our tea went cold. I made more. It went cold too. We talked, then fell silent, then talked again. Grace wanted to ask everything. I told her everything. Patricia, the child, the company, the lawsuit, the California apartment. When she heard it all, she stared at the table for a long time. Do you know how long he's been planning this? She said. I don't know, but it started long ago. Was choosing me a coincidence? I looked at her. I would tell the truth. I always did. No, I said, it wasn't. You looked reliable. Someone with a family, with a mother, someone rooted. That's how men like him choose. Grace took a deep breath. And you. Me. Your savings. He had calculated that too. Yes, but he didn't get it. No, he didn't. Grace lifted her head. Our eyes met. There was something in her eyes. Yes, there was pain. But beneath it, something else. Still small, but there. Something hard. She had inherited that from her mother. 3 months later, Daniel completed the paperwork. Grace's lawyer spoke with Patricia's lawyer. A joint case was filed. In addition to Jason's debt in New York, compensation was demanded for the damage he caused Grace. We knew the case would take time, but it had begun. Patricia called me once to thank me. If it weren't for you, she said, this might have gone on for years. I just opened the door, I said. The rest was already yours. There was a brief silence, then, I don't know how to raise my child alone. I didn't know either, I said, but I did. I invited Betty for dinner to thank her, just the two of us, a small table, simple food. I opened a bottle of wine. I don't do that often. If it weren't for you, I said. Betty laughed. I just brought a photo. Sometimes a photo is enough. We raised our glasses. Grace healed, slowly, shaken, but moving forward. She went back to work, started seeing her friends again. Some evenings she came over. We drank tea, talked. Sometimes she talked about Jason. Sometimes she didn't. One evening she said, Mom, why didn't you tell me right away? Why did you wait? Because if I came with just a photo, I said, Jason would have convinced you. He would have said the neighbor misunderstood, or was jealous, or made something up, and you would have believed him, because you loved him. What if you had the documents earlier? If I had gone before everything was ready, he would have run, and I didn't know what he might do before running. Grace thought for a moment. So you waited to protect me. I waited for everything to protect you. We were silent. Then Grace said softly, almost to herself, How did you stay so calm? You never broke. You never shouted. I set my cup down and looked at her. What good does shouting do? I said. People who shout make mistakes. People who stay calm win. Grace smiled, a real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in a long time. I smiled too. Outside, it was dark. The kitchen light was on. Our tea sat in front of us. In my small apartment, at my table, with my daughter. Jason had lived here. For 3 months, he was gone. I remained. Thank you for listening to the story all the way to the end. Please tell us which city you're watching from and what the story made you feel. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss new stories.